Live every day as if it were the last, because before you know it, time goes past and life's just not that long. Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone. Taste the wind, don't let it blow on by. Sing songs of love.
I grew up on our farm in Illinois, 100 miles west of Chicago. I went to a one-room country school, one teacher for grades 1 through 6. When I was in first grade, at least one time I sat next to sixth grader Roger Malataka to share a music book. Not enough books for everyone to have one. I felt a special attraction to tall, dark Italian Roger in this mostly white community. I did not fantasize about sex with Roger. I did not know about those wonderful pleasures, male with male. But I felt a special, cozy, at-home magnetism for Roger. I do not know if Roger, as he grew older, was gay or bisexual or straight. He moved away. Sadly, I do not know if Roger is alive or dead. When I was 12, teenager David worked shirt-free on our farm. I was very attracted to him. Once, when I was maybe 14, my mother came into our bathroom and caught me masturbating. She insisted that I promise not to masturbate. After that, I felt terribly torn between not wanting to break my promise to my mother and wanting to keep enjoying my cock and coming in orgasm. So I started masturbating in a different way. In high school, when certain male athletes came into the library, the invisible spotlight of my attention focused on these athletes. I wanted them. I needed them. But they apparently did not feel the same toward me. 2 male-female couples in my class got pregnant before graduation. Now, I'm glad I did not have a child to parent, but I envied them for having sex. No teacher in high school, no teacher in college told me many well-known men, past and present, were gay or bisexual, enjoying sex and romance with men. Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Baird Rustin, Langston Hughes, and multitudes more. If you're black or brown or native or Asian, how would you feel if your teachers never spoke about well-known black and brown and native and Asian people, but only about white people? If you're a woman, how would you feel if your teachers never spoke about well-known women, past or present, only about men? After I became a sincere young Christian preacher at age 20, I became friends with many teenage Chicano guys in that town of Sterling, Illinois. And some told me of girls they liked, they dated. I envied them for having sex with girls. I never had, even though I was older than they were. I had no openly gay or bisexual friends for years. I knew several Bible verses condemned sex between men, but the same Bible, sadly, in hundreds of verses, supported men killing men in war. I did not know that millions of men, past and present, have been in love with men, made love with men in passionate romance. The same Bible that supported war in hundreds of verses supported slavery. I found out years later, even David and Jonathan in the Bible were in love with each other. Have you ever heard a preacher or priest or rabbi say that? Later in my 20s, when I was no longer pastor, I told my mother I wanted to have sex with someone. I assumed it would be with a woman. But who? I'd never seriously dated a woman. And later I drove from Albuquerque to Juarez, Mexico. I had sex with a woman, sex worker there. And first time in my life with another human being, I had sex. But I came before I would have entered her. I was so eager. I had waited for years. How sad that in my 20s, I felt I had to go to another nation and pay a pimp to have sex with a woman stranger. I was not attracted to her, and she was not probably attracted to me. But this was my first time of sex with another human being. My Spanish was not good. Her English was not good. It was far from romantic for both of us. And later I had sex with a couple women in Albuquerque and one young woman in Illinois, in the town where I had been pastor years before, Sterling. And one night there at the Latin American Social Club, I danced with Connie. She said she might not live long. She wanted sex with me. I knew she was living with a man, so I asked her, well, what about him? She said they were liberated, free to have sex with other people. I told my dear friend Johnny Sotelo that night at the dance about the situation. I wondered what he would advise. He said he thought she was lonely, and whatever happens, happens. So I went to her place after the dance. Her boyfriend was not home. She and I had sex. And after sex, while I was still lying naked in their bed, she kept going to the window watching for her boyfriend. And when he came home, she went after him. Where had he been? Doing what? With whom? And I was still lying naked in their bed. He came into the bedroom. He saw me. He was probably kind of shocked to see me there. he knew of me, I pretended to be asleep. I'm glad he did not attack me. They kept arguing, going after each other, and finally they both went to sleep in other rooms. As the dawn came, I put on my clothes, I left a wiser man. I learned that some people, not all, but some people who say they are sexually liberated are not sexually liberated. They're bullshitting. Maybe even bullshitting themselves. That they're still hung up on jealousy and trying to cage the other person. Do not be conned as I was. Actually, I was sexually attracted to two of Connie's brothers, but I never had sex with them. For many years, while my parents were still living, I lived part-time there in Illinois with them on the farm, and part-time here in Albuquerque. In late 1976, almost 44 plus 22, 34 plus 22, 56 years ago, my friends Steve and Cease here told me they wanted to take me to a place I might like. They took me to a gay bar on Central. Never before that had I been in a gay bar. I met a young Chicano from Cuba, New Mexico. He and I had sex at my place. That was my first time with any male. I was 31. And soon after, I told my mother. She said she had never known there were gay people in the world. I had feared losing my straight male friends if I came out to them as a gay man. And some did back off from me. Some turned cold. But one of them apologized to me years later. Since that first sex with a man almost 46 years ago, I had sex with many men, dozens and dozens of men in Albuquerque, Chicago, San Diego, New York City, once in New York, down by the water near the piers within sight of the Statue of Liberty, Madison, Wisconsin, Wichita, Kansas, Peoria, Illinois, San Antonio, Texas, Ohio, and on our Illinois farm. I tasted romance with some men. Bisexual Jose from Mexico, I met when he was 23 at the Spence Hot Springs in the Jemez Mountains. I had sex more often with Jose than any other man in my life, over 70 times. I kept track. I loved him. I deeply loved him. Sadly, he got involved with drugs. He was locked up. His green card was taken away. He was sent back to Mexico. Roberto, dear Roberto, that was not his given name, but that was the name I called him. Died of AIDS at 31. I chose my plot, my grave, at San Jose de Armijo Cemetery, close to Roberto's grave. My beloved Don died in a car crash at 25. His mother had me in charge of his memorial service. Another Don from Taos Pueblo in northern New Mexico. David from Michigan. His father was Palestinian American. He and I danced together at a Mexican bar 36 years ago in Illinois. It was not a gay bar. No one attacked us. No one threatened us. Often we hold the keys to our own prisons. And with David, it was the first time in my life that I wept sucking his toes as we had sex in the beautiful outdoor location in Ohio. Before my mother died in 1982, I often told her about my having sex with men. And once she told me she wished she could be a mouse in the corner. She meant to watch me have sex with a man. Sadly, that never happened. I introduced her to Jaime, a young gay Chicano in Houston. He deeply impressed my mother, but he and I never became lovers. In the 1970s, when I was in Illinois, I wrote to my friend Patty Quintana here in Martineztown telling her I am gay. She wrote me back a good letter saying she knew I am gay from the first day she met me years before. And when I was here in Albuquerque, I wrote to my friend Lupio Laldi in Sterling, Illinois, telling him I am gay. He wrote me back a good letter saying he knew I was gay from the first day he met me years before. Often friends of gay or bisexual persons know years before the gay or bisexual persons come out publicly, if they ever do. Some, sadly, never come out, even to their closest friends. I would rather be hated, I'd rather be rejected by some people for who I am than be loved for living a lie. My mother taught me to tell the truth. I treasure my strong sexual and romantic attraction to certain men. Life is too precious to fake. Romance, too precious to hide. If you are just coming out as a gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender person, tell adult friends you know and trust who have openly LGBT friends. But if you're under 18 and your parents are strongly against being gay or bisexual or lesbian or transgender, you may need to wait until you are at least 18 and can move out before you tell your parents. We have so much to learn from other cultures in this world. The native Titiré people who lived in the southern Philippines in the 1960s enjoyed complete equality between men and women. Men were not above women. Women were not above men in any way. Men and women deeply understood each other, helped each other. A spirit of harmony. No battles of men against women, no battles of women against men. Caring, nonviolence, warmth, nurturing, sharing, empathy. were not considered feminine qualities. They were human qualities, the right way for both men and women to live. Bravery, confidence, clear thinking, boldness in sex, boldness in conversation were not considered masculine qualities. They were human qualities, the right way for both men and women to live. Toughness, dominating others, taking advantage of others were not right for men, not right for women. The Titteret people were marvelously healthy, always vigorous, robust, no signs of mental illness of any kind. We have much to learn from them. I constantly collect wisdom every day in order to live it and to share it with anyone interested. Eating crap can cause alcoholism. Sugar is the gateway drug to alcoholism and many other drug addictions. Nutritionist Roger Williams proved that not enough nutrients causes alcoholism. In experiments with rats, only 10% of those with full nutrition became alcoholic. But when nutrients were cut by about 1/3, about 33%, about 1/3 of the rats became alcoholic. And when nutrients were tripled for super nutrition, only 1% became alcoholic. In another study on people who smoke and booze, when they received super nutrition, an amazing 80% stopped smoking and boozing without even trying. Dr. John Douglas found that booze and cigarette addictions went away when those patients ate only raw foods. No willpower needed. Raw foods tell our body what is good and what is bad for our health. Dr. Joseph Beasley started a clinic for alcoholics in New York with the highest success rate in the nation. Years earlier, he, Dr. Joseph Beasley, himself was severely alcoholic. His brother, a lawyer, died young from booze. The foundation of Dr. Beasley's recovery from alcoholism and his treatment program there in New York was good nutrition. And I have a copy of his book. See if you can get it through the library, interlibrary loan, How to Defeat Alcoholism, Nutritional Guidelines for Getting Sober. Dr. Joseph Beasley, Beasley. I eat no crap, no meat, no dairy. I drink no booze. I drink no sodas, no coffee. I smoke no cigarettes. I take no prescription drugs, no illegal street drugs. I eat healthy, raw plant foods. I stopped cooking my food in 1998, December 12th, almost 24 years ago. If all the many millions of desperately poor people on earth were suddenly able to consume, to pollute, to travel, and to eat meat and dairy as most middle income or even lower middle income people in the United States, the Earth's environment and the climate emergency, the climate crisis, would be far worse than it is now. The American dream is a nightmare disaster for human, plant, and animal life on Earth. I have no right to much more than I need, while many millions worldwide suffer on far less than they need. I enjoy living simply on less than the U.S. poverty level. My home is one sunny room, 9.5 by 12 feet, with 6 windows in the house of a friend. Also, a garden in the backyard for food and flowers. I enjoy nutritious food, good health, much walking, other exercise, many friends. Enough. Bastante. Sadly, most people in the United States are constantly bombarded from television, radio, billboards, newspapers, internet, to buy stuff no one on earth needs. And they become severely addicted to this crap. Much like growing up in a family where almost everyone is alcoholic. Living healthy, living sober, with no booze seems weird in such a family. I enjoy living simply, less spoiled, less bills, less stress, more freedom. I refuse to be a slave to ads, to commercials, to corporations, for crap I do not need. I refuse to be their slave. Crap I do not want. Why hog much more than my fair share in our world family of almost 8 billion sisters and brothers? Freedom is not wanting much stuff I do not need. My time is more precious than millions of dollars. My friendships more precious than mansions full of expensive crap. Booze, junk food, cocaine, meth are all awful addictions. But no addiction is more harmful than craving much more money, much more stuff than we need. Sugar, heroin, guns, cigarettes, sodas are all awful addictions. But no addiction is more harmful than craving much more money, much more stuff than we need. Like many people, men and women, gay, straight, bisexual, I'm able to be openly and honestly in love with more than one person at the same time. We teach children to share food. We teach children to share toys. We teach kids to share friends. How selfish, how cruel the child who demands that his child friend have no other friends, no other playmates. And we adults can learn to share our lovers with others. We enjoy a variety of flowers, fruits, vegetables, colors, books, songs. And many of us also enjoy a variety of lovers. A loving parent can have a deep, special bond with each of several children. Can someone be a faithful parent only if he or she has and loves just one child? I refuse to let any man cage me. I refuse to let any man fence me in romantically. So I have no right to cage him. I have no right to fence him in. And every man I've been in love with has taught me, helping me become a wiser, a better lover. All romantic relationships face hurdles, bumps, conflicts. Why put all our eggs into one basket? Invest our hearts into more than one lover and do it honestly. No cover-ups, no lies, no double standards. Do it honestly with all involved. So if one lover backs out, if one lover moves away or dies, we may feel less desperate, less abandoned, less devastated, and more able to cope in our sad loss. I do not own any man, no matter how deeply I'm in love with him. Good romance is never slavery. I cannot make any man fall in love with me. I cannot make any man stay in love with me. And I'm a fool if I try to force him. Hell no to cover-ups, to lies, to so-called cheating, double standards, and insane jealousy. Yes to deep intimacy. Yes to sexual pleasure shared generously with more than one person. We can learn so much from the misery and mistakes of our loved ones. My mother was my all-time closest friend. My mother and I had many strong arguments. We had many serious conflicts. But no one will ever love me more than she did. Probably no one will ever love me as much as she did. My mother died at 74 in 1982, 40 years ago this past February. My mother enjoyed the TV comedy that has a good message, All in the Family, with Archie and Edith Bunker. My mother loved beautiful, heart-touching music. My mother supported marriage between whites and blacks. But sadly, my mother did not live long enough to see her oldest grandson, Daniel, marry the black woman, Bonita. My mother did not live long enough to see their 3 children who are now adults. My mother loved to give to other people. Giving was her habit. Giving was her high in life. My mother taught me to stand up for what is fair and right. She was glad to see herself in her wheelchair on TV news at a protest demonstration at 71 when she was with me here in Albuquerque for a visit. My mother expressed her deep feelings, sadness, love, anger, humor. My mother was smart on many things. She was a very honest, conscientious secretary in our family's business. She remembered many telephone numbers, and like millions of women, she yearned for passionate romance but was not in love with her husband, my dad, for most of their 48-year marriage until she died. When she married at 26 years old, she weighed 98 pounds. She was lean, very active physically there on the Illinois farm where she was born, in that house upstairs, 1907, October 7th. The farm where she lived all her life, the farm where my brother and I grew up. And until I was born, when she was 38, she drove tractors and trucks. She milked cows. At 26 years old, weighing 98 pounds, how could she have imagined weighing 270 pounds in her 50s? At 26, weighing 98 pounds, how could she have imagined having huge legs filled with fluid because of heart and kidney diseases? My mother loved children, but she hated having children stare at her huge legs. She did not go to doctors for many years. She was afraid they would find cancer. Her mother, my granny, died of cancer in her liver and her colon. Walking a short distance became work for my mother when she became so fat. She no longer washed most of her body. She sat in a chair to sleep, slumped over because her back hurt her bad when she got up, if she would lie down at night. Maybe a sign of the kidney disease that finally killed her. For many years, she got almost no sunshine. Sadly, like millions of people, she ate almost no raw greens. Besides many bananas, she ate almost no raw foods. My mother and my dad were miserable cellmates in the prison of their marriage until she died. And much of the time, it was emotional war. If I had been my dad, I do not know how I could have coped being married to my mother. If I had been my mother, I do not know how I could have coped being married to my dad. I wish they had parted peacefully or had never married. They might have been good friends, if not married to each other. My mother said about my dad and my brother, they think I don't know anything because she was a woman. After I told her when I first had sex with any man when I was 31, she feared losing her closeness with me if I would have a long-term lover companion. And I can understand, because she had lost her closeness with my brother when he got married at 20. I have only one brother, no sisters. He was almost 11 when I was born. My mother was 38 when I was born. And after that, she got fatter and fatter until she was 270 pounds in her 50s when I was a teenager. And I never asked my brother this. He is alive, 87 years old, on his farm in Illinois. But how did he feel seeing his very active, lean mother become so fat, so sick, so trapped in her body? Did my brother subconsciously blame me? I don't know. Mother deeply loved both him and me, and the only poem she ever wrote was about my brother. I do not know if he realizes to this day how much our mother loved him, how much she wanted to stay close to him after he got married, to have heart-to-heart conversations with him. I wonder if he has ever realized in these past 40 years since our mother died what he missed. I never remember seeing my mother run or even walk long distances. She was an excellent secretary, many years, long hours in the office, often from 8 or 9 in the morning until 6 or 7 or later in the evening, but very little exercise. And of course, the fatter she got, the less she felt like moving her body. For many years, no indoor toilet there at the business where she worked as secretary. So she held her shit. She held her piss. Very unhealthy. Very unhealthy. I do not know how I would have coped trapped in her sick, fat body. She hated going to our country church on Easter. Why? Seeing other women dressed in new spring clothes. Her body became the enemy, the torture chamber of her young at heart, full of life, passionate spirit. Young at heart, full of life, passionate spirit, but trapped in her sick, fat body. I think my mother and dad seldom, if ever, had sex after I was born. She yearned for passionate romance for over 30 years. Like millions, she was starved for hot, romantic sex. So sadly, she became severely addicted to sugar shit at night before sleeping. She and I both were severely addicted to slow poison sugar shit, ice cream, cookies, cake, candy, when I was a kid and in my 20s. But I saw the hell she suffered. I woke up. I changed. How did my mother feel seeing neighbor women walking miles for exercise, neighbor women gardening, and she not able anymore? I eat no sugar shit. My only sweets are fresh, whole fruit, not fruit juice. We need the fiber. Sometimes blended carrots and raw honey. She used to tell me when she had me do many things for her she could no longer do. I would not ask you if I could do it myself. My mother said, someday you will understand. I have learned so much from the misery and the mistakes of both my mother and my dad. I have treasured sex and romance with certain men, but I am so glad I never got married and never will. I speak about the suffering of people heavy, overweight, being fat. Yes, usually instead of saying heavy or overweight, I say fat. Tell it like it is. And before my mother died of kidney disease, she was down to about 100 pounds, and she was so glad to have lost that fat. I refuse to dance around the very serious problem of being fat. Tell it like it is. If I can help anyone avoid getting fat, or if I can help anyone lose that fat and get lean and healthy and to enjoy their body until they die, I am glad. We can wake up. We can change. I have no desire to get married to any man on earth. I do not want to add 1 pound of fat to my body. Every pound of fat, more than our ideal lean and healthy body weight, puts more strain on our knees, our ankles, our hips, our back, our heart, our lungs, our liver, our kidneys. We can learn so much from the misery and the mistakes of our loved ones. And anyone who wants to lose fat will lose fat by eating only raw plant foods, greens, seeds, nuts, vegetables, fruit, no cooked food, no meat, no dairy, no booze, nothing containing sugar or artificial sweetener. I know of a man who lost 130 pounds by eating only raw plant foods. I saw the tragedy of staying stuck in a marriage miserable for both my parents. I saw the tragedy of my mother becoming severely addicted to sugar shit as a slow poison substitute for hot romantic sex and romance that she yearned for. So many lessons we can learn from our loved ones. Prophet Martin Luther King Jr. damned the Vietnam War in his most controversial speech entitled A Time to Break Silence on April 4th, 1967, exactly 1 year before he was assassinated. King damned the U.S. mass murder of Vietnamese people. King said, "The greatest purveyor of violence in the world today is my own government." The New York Times, the Washington Post, many newspapers across the nation condemned King's strong message of truth. Many whites, many blacks, the White House, even most of King's inner circle of black leaders condemned his strong message of truth. King suffered much hatred, many death threats. And why is that speech, where he damned the Vietnam War, far less known, far less honored than his I Have a Dream speech? Sadly, most King celebrations today castrate King's message. Sadly, most King celebrations do not emphasize his strong stand against nuclear weapons. Hear that, Sunday lads. Against the Vietnam War, against the evils of capitalism and the U.S. empire. Martin Luther King Jr. was a prophet, not a politician, not a rock star. He refused to silence his conscience. He refused to sell out his convictions to get the popular support of millions and the approval of the powerful. Would a loving human parent slam and lock the door forever against a son or daughter, regardless what evil they had done? Would a loving parent God sentence billions of people, or even one person, to never-ending torture, no pardon, no parole? And to all who believe in a loving parent God, do you believe in hell? I would never want to spend eternity with such a damn cruel monster God. And I've never in my life met anyone that I could say for sure, no matter how much better brain chemistry, no matter how much better parenting he or she might have had, no matter how much love and time and truth, that person would forever refuse to wake up and choose good instead of evil. Would a loving, all-powerful parent God refuse to help millions of people in war zones who prayed desperately to keep them and their families safe, but they were massacred despite all their anguished prayers? Massacred often by soldiers who claimed to be religious, even Christian. Soldiers on both sides praying to God while they murder each other. Soldiers on both sides believing their noble patriotic duty approved by God to go murder their enemies. I was a sincere Christian preacher 56 years ago in Illinois and Virginia. I've not yet learned to question the Bible deeply. I thank many people who have helped me open my eyes. Mr. D was in the hospital for the removal of his right kidney. He suffered great pain. His piss was the color of blood, and the x-ray had shown a large kidney stone. The surgeon's opinion was that the kidney was diseased, and not to remove it would be a danger to this man's life. But Mr. D refused the surgery. He took to drinking his piss quite naturally. He drank all the piss he passed. He fasted repeatedly for several days at a time. And within a few weeks, his condition was improved to the extent that he had no pain. His piss was of normal color. In 3 months, Mr. D went back to the hospital and was told there was nothing wrong with his kidney. Urine therapy works. Drinking our piss for health works. Urine therapy is the simplest, the safest, the most effective natural healer, and it is free. The drug companies aren't going to make money off our drinking our own piss, and so they're glad when we are ignorant of its value. They're glad when we turn up our nose and say that's gross. I've drunk my piss 1 to 5 cups every day for health since November 10th, 1999. Now usually 2 cups in the morning as I exercise. Also, if I can find it here quickly, I want to, here we go. Tom Grissom was a white man who grew up in the state of Mississippi. And born in 1940, Tom became very aware of the evil horrors of white supremacy against black people during slavery and ever since slavery. Tom rejected superstition. Tom was an atheist. Tom rejected religion. For 15 years, 1970 to 1985, Tom worked at Sandia Weapons Lab in Albuquerque. Tom worked designing nuclear weapons of mass murder. But in 1985, Tom woke up. Tom Grissom realized how evil his work was at the weapons lab. He abruptly resigned. He got out of the mass murder business at Sandia Weapons Lab. And then for 22 years, Tom enjoyed teaching at a college in the state of Washington. Tom died last October at age 81. I strongly compliment Tom for making a huge, good change when he quit his 15-year job at Sandia Weapons Lab. I wish all scientists there, Sandia Weapons Lab, Los Alamos Weapons Lab, would follow the example of Tom Grissom. Get out of the mass murder business. Good night. My fresh piss to your health.
Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone. Taste the wind, don't let it blow on by. Sing songs of love, let the music get you high, and when it's said and done, you'll know the sun will shine on. And when it's said